recording now. All right. So I just wanted to thank everyone for attending this evening. Shouldn't be a very long meeting. Um, just like many things we've had to do the past year, adapting to things. This is a medium where hopefully we can communicate some information about the track and field season. For those who don't know me, my name is Bill King. I've been at the high school now for 8.5, 9 years. This is my 10th year of teaching, and have been coaching throughout that entire time. Um, so my plan for tonight is I am going to speak briefly about the Booster Club. We'll have the Booster Club president, Carrie Drake, add a couple things. I'll talk about just some general procedures in terms of the track and field season, and then also our schedule, which I'm receiving information, as you could imagine, almost daily. During a normal spring season, we're dealing with weather and schedule changes due to just the school calendar. This year, along with all of the COVID guidelines, that's also changed how we've had to do things and entries and where meets are at, where meets are allowed to be held, and how many individuals. But I'll get to that when it comes to the schedule. So for any of those points, or at any point, excuse me, you want to jump in and ask a question, you can put it in the chat. I'll try and keep that open so that I can see. Or if you want to say anything out loud, use to that, definitely with the kids in the classroom. So if I begin by, again, this is where it's going to be tough without two sheets. What you should see up on your screen is displaying the booster sign-up form that was distributed to all of the athletes over the past 4 days. We do ask, the school district has a policy that we cannot require, and we don't require that the kids pay a $50 fee for their family members to be a part of the Booster Club. But as you can read on this form, the Booster Club, we provide food, snacks, gifts, just different services for the kid throughout the season. If kids are fortunate enough to attend invitationals or later meets, the Booster Clubs even buy those kids some additional sweatshirts or gear. That's just one thing that came off the top of my head, that just an additional thing that the Booster Club does for our program. So just like any of the other Booster Clubs, I'm sure you're familiar with, the Quarterback Club, Round Ball Association, provide gifts, have meals, snacks ready for the kids, provide the end of the year banquet where athletes will receive some type of gift. So that's all we ask for that $50 donation. Along with that, we have, this is, I believe, year 3. We were still able to have the fundraiser last year. This is year 3 where we will be raffling off a $500 Visa gift card. Tickets were passed out to the athletes today at practice. And they'll be selling tickets, and it mentions that that is also in the letter. So at that point, let me go back to this. Carrie, you want to add anything in addition to the boosters?
No, just that we're looking for other people to help if they're interested to contact me.
I would also like to echo Carrie's point about that. I myself can speak that Carrie has done a tireless job doing this. She's had Cameron is now a senior in college, and she was helping when Cameron was a freshman, sophomore in high school up to this point, and Paige will be a senior next year. So she's put a lot of work in, and as we all see in a lot of different organizations, specifically student organizations, we will take all the help that we can get, because oftentimes, as we've seen in other organizations, there's a lot of time that's put into this, and we need people hopefully to help out. And Carrie does a great job, and we really appreciate the work that she's been able to do for us. So that's really the information on the boosters. Anybody have any questions? I'll just stop and pause for questions before I head over to the next sheet, where again I'll talk about practice procedures, just some things in general, specifically related to the COVID protocols. Carrie, it looks like you may have a helper, just so you know. Mrs. Grimm's looking to help out. All right, so let me go to displaying the manual. This is the track and field manual. I also use this for cross country in the fall. The spots that are highlighted are what I'm going to cover. Now, again, this is where if there's anything I'm not hitting on, if you have any particular questions, especially if your son or daughter is new to track and field, please don't hesitate to ask. Stop me when I ask for questions. Give me a list of things. Or if you want to, and this goes for anything that I don't hit on as well, if you would feel more comfortable sending an email, I welcome that as well. So going down, I mentioned I'm just going to focus on the highlighted pieces for the rules and expectations. Dressing for practice is extremely important for spring sports during a normal season, but on top of having your son or daughter prepared for the weather in Western Pennsylvania during the spring, it's extremely important also, just like the other sports at the high school and the middle school this year, that they have a face mask each and every day, and then they're also bringing their own water. That is part or was part of the return to play procedures that were set forth due to the COVID restrictions. So athletes must have a mask. To go briefly into what we have to do as an athletic program when the athletes are not competing or actively participating, they need to wear a mask. So, for example, during our normal practice, we meet in the cafeteria, take attendance, there are temperature checks, the athletes fill out the daily screening form. Everybody wears masks, give them their information for the day. When we head down to the track, all athletes are still wearing masks. Once we go down, begin our warm-ups, do our dynamic stretching, that's when our athletes take masks off. Now, over the past 4 days, we've had athletes, when they do have the option, most have taken off, some do keep them on. We do not require, obviously, our athletes to take them off, so if they're more comfortable wearing them, that's not an issue. So then after we've done dynamics and we break into our event groups or conditioning like we've done these first couple of days, then athletes, while they are, quote, practicing, competing in an event or a practice, then they don't have to wear the mask. But when they are taking a water break, when they are around each other, socializing in between them, that's when they should have the mask on. So for a lot of the names I'm seeing, your son or daughter has participated in another sport. So hopefully they're familiar with the procedures. It hasn't been an issue yet, and we stay in constant contact with our athletic department with what is expected specifically for our season. Moving down to the next highlighted point, having proper running shoes. If your son or daughter, most kids, this is, again, I'm actually having this meeting a couple days after practices, there haven't been any major issues where we've had anybody running in cowboy boots or large, oversized basketball shoes. We usually just generally recommend training or running shoes for our daily practices and to wear to meets, just because that's the way, or wearing proper shoes is a way to eliminate injury. That's usually where we see some injuries, is if kids don't have proper footwear. When it comes to event-specific shoes, if your son or daughter knows what they're going to be doing, they need spikes for sprinting, they need throwing shoes for throwing the shot put, then it's okay to go purchase those. But what I always tell the kids, especially the first week, is they don't need to go out. They don't necessarily need to run out and buy something, especially if they're trying a couple different events the first few weeks. For attendance, this is something that is really, just like school at the high school, has been a challenge in terms of the consistency of the kids both being in the building and online. Just generally, that point about excused absences for family emergency, medical illness, academic requirements. That being said, I will add on that we have a history of being extremely accommodating. If your son or daughter is involved in 7-on-7, volleyball practice, dance, work, any type of extracurricular, or even something in the community, we usually try to work with the athlete. I put a form in the previous email when the link for this meet was about if they had any outside responsibilities for our athletes filled out, so that we have a coaching staff have a master place where all the outside of activities that conflict with spring sports go for our kids. So we try and be accommodating. Definitely, just like the school year, trying to keep track of everybody. It can become a little bit of an issue because they can be in school while being at home. So I've had a couple just a few issues of people that haven't had rides or are still looking to participate but haven't been able to make it to practice. So we're dealing with that. And then unexcused absences, just real briefly, they can result in a meet suspension. More offense can be grounds for removal from the team. Again, I try and work with that. If it becomes too much of an issue that an athlete can't make any practices and decides after 2 or 3 weeks of practices and one or two competitions that they've only showed up, say, for one practice and one of the meet days, that's usually when we have to make a decision that it may be best for that athlete to maybe focus on something else and maybe give track and try another year. So let me pause there as I'm just talking. Anybody have any questions on attendance? Anything I mentioned about practice and the mask requirement? All right. Like I said, it's kind of difficult to hop back and forth here, especially if somebody types in the chat. I won't see it because I don't have, unfortunately, like at school, my double screen. For training, this was something that we mentioned with the kids. Don't do anything detrimental to yourself. We've been fortunate during the time that I've been at Central Valley that we've never, knock on wood, had any real serious instances. We've had one or two things just with students just being disruptive at a meet or being unsportsmanlike. We've taken care of that in-house. I've had some meet suspensions. A handful of years ago, we had to remove an athlete, but fortunately, we've had, considering we have 60 to 70 athletes per year, it's been a very, very small number of instances. For academic expectations, I will go over the school's general policy because it has all of it. You can read all the bullet points about maintaining eligibility, a minimum of a 2.0, no E or F grades. Just for the high school and middle school, any school-sponsored sports, and this goes for if you have a son or daughter in another athletic event, if they are failing 2 classes in a week. They run grades weekly. If they are failing 2 classes in a week, they are ineligible. They're able to practice, but they are unable to compete in our meets. For end of 9 weeks grades, if they have 1 F on their report card, then they are ineligible for 15 school days. So for that is a big obstacle for the spring sports coaches, track and field, baseball, softball, boys, tennis. If we have one of our athletes out during that with an F after that third 9-week grading period, that athlete has usually sunk a good majority and usually a good portion of the good weather from their spring season. So that's something we definitely preach to the kids the first week is make sure your grades are great and up to par all the time, but especially if you're in danger of failing something for the 9 weeks. Because as I mentioned, it's 15 school days. So that does not include, obviously, weekends. It does not include oftentimes the Easter or spring break holiday falls in during that time. So it really takes a good chunk because oftentimes that athlete is not returning till the end of April, usually around the 22nd through the 25th of April. So that's something that we do preach. It's cannot be failing 2 grades in a week. Cannot have 1 F on the report card. School attendance, I've talked about this in the past. I kind of laughed to myself, not laugh, but school attendance this year, they do need to be logged on because the old rule, and we'll see if it changes, if the educational model changes this year, next year, or whatever and whenever that happens. But the old rule, was that athletes need to be in school by 8:15 in order to participate and meet, practice, any of those things. They need to be logged in to their meets, classes at the appropriate time, obviously attending anything. And obviously it's not any different that the old rule if they're attending in person. But try and keep in contact with Mrs. Hume, our secretary at the high school, with attendance, with the athletic department in this. Just the overall message is, it's just an added layer that they have the ability to be online and be deemed at school. So just something we'll keep an eye on. Really becomes in years past just on meet days, but want to make sure they're in school each and every day on time so that they can participate, practice, or compete in a meet. It goes over competition expectations, travels, about riding the bus and that sort of things. Let me pause for a second before I go with the varsity letter, because that will actually kind of go into some information I received today related to the schedule as well. So anybody, any questions? And again, I didn't hit on every single thing. Anybody have any questions about riding the bus or travel, or just I can reference myself how things changed slightly with COVID restrictions from the fall sports, having coached cross country. Anybody have any questions? Nobody has any questions? Let me go to this final point that I've highlighted in here. For varsity letter requirements, this is the I wanted to mention and bring this up last, because this may change just based off of how this year is going to be, unlike others in the past, obviously. For varsity letter requirements, which obviously as a varsity sport plays a huge role for a lot of kids, attendance, I'll just read from there. Exemplary attendance is required. Please note, if you are absent from a meet, even excused, you're in danger of not lettering. Also, if you miss more than 3 practices, you're in danger. Like I said, myself and the other coaches work with the kids, but attending on a regular basis, we do not award letters, nor do we want. This is not a program where kids can just show up on meet day. We do expect them to communicate with us where they're at, making sure they're making their practices and obviously committed to the high school track program. Athletic performance, earning 10 points throughout the track season. I'll get to how that may change in a second. Having a positive attitude, not an attitude. They should show positive and respectful attitude towards everybody, our team as well as the opposing teams. Effort and hard work at practices, and encourage and cheering for your teammates. Just goes with having a positive attitude and having our program continue to stay strong. And then finally, sportsmanship. They should show sportsmanship by always being respectful to others and being humble in victory and gracious in defeat. I mentioned there's a disclaimer at the bottom. We determine which athletes will earn varsity letter. Special circumstances exist where an athlete does not meet all the requirements but may still earn a varsity letter. If someone has a handful of points, works very hard, attends every practice, and we feel as a coaching staff they should earn a letter, we have obviously done that pretty much on a yearly basis as well. So I was mentioning specifically about the athletic performance, and I'm going to hop over to the schedule. This is the most up-to-date schedule. If you can see based off of how this is displayed, this is a Google sheet that Mr. Ciccone, the athletic director, edits. So you can see here based off of even from, I believe, Monday when I passed this out to the kids, that the Pine Richland Invitational was initially on the paper. It has been X'd out. Reason is Pine Richland School District, their athletic director reached out to everyone in the WPIAL, said that with the restrictions in place, and they don't know what the world is going to be like, hopefully moving in the right direction, on May 7th, that they have decided they are not going to host a large invitational. So when it comes to, I'll speak first about invitationals and section meets, because in a normal year, let's speak about pre-COVID things. For these meets at Southside, home against Quaker Valley, at Newcastle, at Ambridge, not at Avonworth, at home against Avonworth. Those meets traditionally is where we would have all of our athletes compete. We have an unlimited amount of entries. They can do up to 4 events based off of what they practice. And we try and have we have all of our athletes compete in those. There has been, and this was something that I found out early in the week, there was talk amongst our athletic directors, both at the county and in our section, that they were thinking about limiting the number of entries for away teams to 3. just to cut down the numbers and the way that scoring works in a dual meet or a time that is small, there are only three scoring marks. First place is 5 points. Second place is 3 points. Third place is 1. That's how a meet is scored in a team setting. Since that happened, the section coaches sent around an email saying that some disagreed, others were going to go with their athletic director's decision. I spoke with Mr. Sircone, and we're on the same page in what we're going to do. So that is still out right now, as in for the all I can speak to as of around for the scrimmage against Southside and Freedom, where I'm hovering over the cursor here. Next Thursday, all of our athletes are going to get to compete at Southside and with Freedom, and for our home meet against Quaker Valley and Avonworth. Again, the most recent thing is that we will get all of our kids to participate. For the away meets, it may be as few as 3. It may be everyone. We still don't know. Mr. Sircone communicates this information with me daily. So I've just been long-winded about the varsity letter and the schedule up to that point. Before I talk about the invitationals, I'll pause. Anybody have any questions about the schedule? And then, like I said, I'll go into a little bit more detail about the invitationals. There's no questions about those. I already mentioned as I transitioned over to this page that the Pine Ridge Invitational, they made the decision to cancel it. For these other invitationals, an invitational, if your son or daughter is new to track and field, we get a limited number of entries because for a section meet, we have 1 or 2 teams. For these invitationals, we have a minimum of I believe the Beaver County Championships is our smallest invitational, and it still has 14 other schools, all the schools in Beaver County, obviously. Just going down the line, the Tri-State Track Coaches Association Championship at West Mifflin, there has not been a determination or anything released by West Mifflin about this meet. They host an indoor meet and a cross-country meet in the winter and in the fall. The winter meet was canceled. The fall cross-country championships were moved to a different location. So that one is currently up in the air. As you can see, Mr. Sircone has the date has been taken off of that. Beaver County Championships, we believe that one will be a go. We received information from Riverside. I'm assuming it will be similar to previous years, just obviously have some, I would assume, some social distancing requirements and having athletes wear masks, which is what I assume we'll see a lot of the places that we go. For the MAC championships, that was confirmed that we will be headed to Mars. The plan for the MACs that I know as of tonight, Thursday, March 11th, is that the MAC consists of about around 30 schools. And as opposed to having 30 schools at Mars Middle School, where their track is, they are going to have it in multiple places. So I believe there's going to be around 10 schools at each location. I still have not gotten all the details. I do not know which other schools are going to be there with us. But supposedly they're going to take the results and then compile them from all 3 locations to make one meet. So that's just the first I've heard of that example in regards to enacting some of these COVID protocols. For the South Fayette Invitational, I reached out to the South Fayette head coach today. Still hadn't received any information about that. So we're still waiting for that Saturday, May 1st date. And finally, the WPIAL, which would be the district and the PIAA finals. I have no sources. I have nobody in my ear telling me this, but it is just my opinion as an individual high school coach that I think that as long as they have the facilities, that the WPIAL championships may be split into at minimum 2 days, just because, and again, I have nothing to back this up. This is just what I'm guessing, because currently they do all of the WPIAL schools, which I don't know the exact number, but I want to say it's around 110 schools. And even though that's not every school bringing all of their athletes, that's still 110 schools. that would be bringing X number of individuals to one place. Slippery Rock University began hosting the Whitfield Championships 2 years ago. And while it is spacious in certain spots, is the way I'll say it, it also can be tight. So it is, again, just what I think that they will likely change how that is set up, and that doesn't even go into the details if they will limit how many entries you can have, how many kids will be attending that that event much at the conclusion of our senior season, excuse me. And then the PIAA finals, 28th and the 29th. As we saw, the state changed the playoff format for nearly all sports, whether it was limiting entries, getting seasons done earlier. They have the ability to make those changes just a few weeks or so ahead, and really it's just at their discretion. So like I said, the district championships, the WPIALs, and Slippery Rock in the PIAA finals, that is the most up-to-date information that I have tonight. That's kind of where our season sits right now, the most recent schedule. So that goes through our booster club, just some general practice expectations and expectations for our athletes, and then the varsity schedule. Any questions at all? Anything at all about track and field, I would be happy to answer. All right. Well, if nobody has any questions, again, I thank everyone for popping on tonight. I will be sending this out, the recording out in an attachment, and then all the email correspondence, those things will also be coming out throughout the season. If you need to reach me for anything, don't hesitate to send me an email. Have your son or daughter come talk to me. Myself, along with the staff, we are here for the kids, and hopefully, especially with all of the COVID restrictions, unfortunately we lost our season last year, but hopefully with everything that we're working towards, or all the extra things that are being put in place, we can hopefully have, and we're pretty confident that we'll have a complete and successful season this year. So if you don't have any questions, have a good night, and thank you for popping on.
Thank you.